From Scrapheap to stars. The Kravacs first appeared over major cities 6 months ago, their crystalline ships gleaming like obsidian knives against Earth's blue sky. They didn't come with messages of peace or diplomatic overtures. They came with plasma cannons and gravitational disruptors. Within weeks, most of Earth's major metropolitan centers were reduced to smoking craters. Captain Alina Reyes stood at the edge of what was once San Francisco, now a massive flooded basin where the bay had rushed in after the gravitational weapons had done their work. The Golden Gate Bridge, once majestic, now twisted like a broken toy half-submerged in murky water. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked without turning around. Lieutenant Collins checked his tablet. 17 operational vessels, Captain. Global Defense Command is down to less than 10% capacity. Alina nodded, her face expressionless, but her dark eyes burning with barely contained fury. The United Earth Defense Force had thrown everything they had at the Kravacs fleet. Nuclear warheads, rail guns, even the experimental photon cannons. Nothing made a dent in their shields. The aliens simply laughed, if their communications could be interpreted as laughter, as they systematically dismantled humanity's defenses. And the Kravacs? Any change in their patterns? No, ma'am. They continue to maintain a defensive perimeter around their primary vessels. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for the final phase of planetary subjugation. Alina finally turned, looking at the ragtag group of officers who constituted what remained of the Western Seaboard Command. "Then we don't have much time." Back at the underground facility that had once been a research station for advanced spacefaring technology, Alina addressed the room of engineers, pilots, and mechanics who had survived the initial attacks. "Conventional weapons aren't working," she said, pointing to the holographic display of Kravac ship schematics. "Their shield harmonics adapt to everything we throw at them. Standard military doctrine is failing us." Dr. Aisha Kapoor, head of the engineering division, frowned. "We've analyzed their shield technology. It's at least 2 centuries beyond our most advanced theoretical models." "What about unconventional approaches?" Alina asked. "Something they wouldn't expect." Aisha looked thoughtful. "Their shield systems are designed to counter high-energy weapons and predictable attack vectors. They've never had to deal with anything irregular." That was the moment the idea first formed in Alina's mind, an idea so ridiculous that it just might work. "What if we build ships they'd never consider a threat?" she said slowly. "Ships cobbled together from junk. No standardized designs, no predictable weapon configurations." The room went silent. "You want to fight the most advanced fleet in the known galaxy with garbage?" Admiral Thornton finally asked, disbelief evident in his voice. "Not garbage," Alina corrected. "Adaptability. Their shields anticipate conventional weapons and tactics. What if we built ships so strange, so unpredictable, that their defensive algorithms can't classify the threat?" Before long, Operation Scrapheap was born, though not without significant resistance from military leadership. Admiral Thornton called it a desperate waste of resources. General Rodriguez dismissed it as fantasy born of desperation. But with Earth's conventional forces decimated and the Kravacs preparing for their final assault, desperation was all they had left. The Atom scrapyard outside what remained of Phoenix became their base of operations. Once a massive repository for decommissioned military hardware, it now served as an improvised shipyard. Alina assembled a team of engineers, mechanics, and pilots who shared her unconventional vision. "We use everything," she instructed as they surveyed the mountains of discarded tech. "Comm satellites, decommissioned fighters, even civilian transport hulls. Nothing is off-limits." Aisha took charge of the engineering team, her brilliant mind quickly adapting to the challenge of integrating disparate technologies. "The key is entropy," she explained one evening as they worked. "The Kravac ships are perfect, every system optimized, every component precisely calibrated. That's their weakness. They can't comprehend imperfection." 3 weeks into the project, the first prototype was ready. They called it the Phoenix, a misshapen vessel that looked more like a floating junkyard than a warship. Its hull was a patchwork of different metals and composites. Its propulsion system combined outdated fusion drives with salvaged Kravax technology. Its weapons were an eclectic mix of conventional railguns, mining lasers, and modified industrial equipment. "It's ugly," Admiral Thornton remarked during his inspection visit, "and I doubt it'll even achieve escape velocity, let alone stand up to a Kravax cruiser." "Ugly is the point, sir," Elena replied. "The Kravax can't predict what they can't comprehend." The first test flight nearly ended in disaster. The Phoenix shuddered and groaned as it rose from the desert floor, its mismatched propulsion systems fighting against each other. At one point, a section of the outer hull tore away completely, forcing an emergency landing. "We need to rethink the structural integrity," Aisha said afterward, studying the damage. "The disparate metal types are creating unexpected stress points." "We can use that," Elena suggested. "If we reinforce key sections but leave others deliberately weak, we can create controlled failure points. When hit, parts of the ship would break away rather than transferring energy to the core structure." Aisha's eyes widened. "Sacrificial components. That's brilliant, Captain." The next version of the Phoenix incorporated this new philosophy. Instead of trying to create a conventionally strong vessel, they designed it to fail in strategic ways, shedding damaged components like a lizard losing its tail while preserving core functionality. Word of the project spread, and despite official skepticism, volunteers began arriving at the scrapyard. Engineers brought unorthodox ideas. Mechanics contributed their practical knowledge. Pilots offered to test the increasingly bizarre ships that took shape in the desert. "They're calling us the Junkyard Fleet," Lieutenant Collins reported after returning from a supply run. Elena smiled for the first time in months. "I like it." As more scrap ships took form, military command reluctantly allocated more resources to the project. 6 vessels were under construction simultaneously, each with its own peculiar design philosophy. There was the Chimera, built around the frame of an old oil tanker. The Patchwork, which incorporated parts from 27 different aircraft. The Medusa, bristling with an array of disparate sensors and communication antennae. Simulation data suggested the unconventional designs might actually work against Kravax shields. Their adaptive systems struggled to categorize the hodgepodge vessels, creating microsecond delays in their defensive responses. Those delays might be enough to get a shot through. But they never got the chance to complete full testing. 12 weeks into the project, the Kravax made their move. Multiple ships detected on approach. The warning came over the emergency broadcast. "All remaining defense forces, prepare for engagement." Elena was in the command center when the alert came through. "Status of the fleet," she demanded. "Phoenix is flight ready," Aisha reported. "Chimera and Patchwork are at 80%. The others aren't combat viable yet." Elena's mind raced. They weren't ready. The ships hadn't been fully tested. The crews were still training. But waiting meant certain defeat. "Prepare Phoenix, Chimera, and Patchwork for immediate launch," she ordered. "All volunteer crews to their stations." "Captain," Admiral Thornton's face appeared on the main screen. "The Kravax have broken through our orbital defenses. Our last conventional ships are being overwhelmed." "We're launching now, Admiral." His expression was grave. "This is humanity's last stand, Captain Reyes. Make it count." Elena nodded, then headed for the Phoenix. As she strapped into the command chair, she looked around at her crew, engineers, mechanics, and pilots who had committed themselves to this desperate gambit. "We all know the odds," she said simply. "But remember what we have that they don't. They expect us to fight by their rules. We're about to show them that humans don't play by anyone's rulebook but our own." The Phoenix rose shakily from the desert floor, followed by the Chimera and Patchwork. Their mismatched engines roared and sputtered as they climbed through the atmosphere. Elena watched the tactical display as they approached the battle zone. Kravax ships were methodically destroying the last of Earth's conventional defenses. "They haven't noticed us yet. Lieutenant Collins reported from the sensor station. Their targeting systems are focused on the military vessels. Take us in closer, Elena ordered. Weapons systems on standby. Wait for my mark. As the three scrap ships approached the battle, a Kravax cruiser finally turned its attention to them. Elena could almost imagine the confusion in the alien command center as they tried to classify these bizarre approaching vessels. They're scanning us, Aisha reported. Their targeting systems are fluctuating. I think it's working. Their predictive algorithms can't lock onto our configuration. Elena allowed herself a small smile. All ships prepare to engage. Let's show these aliens what human ingenuity looks like. The Phoenix shuddered as its makeshift weapons systems powered up. Ahead, the crystalline perfection of the Kravax cruiser gleamed against the backdrop of Earth's blue atmosphere. Two civilizations faced off, one built on technical perfection, the other on desperate creativity. Fire. Junkyard warriors. The first volley from Phoenix should have been a laughable effort against the might of a Kravax warship. Instead, it was revolutionary. The mismatched weapons, ranging from modified mining lasers to repurposed industrial plasma cutters, fired in a chaotic pattern. Some shots dissipated harmlessly against the Kravax shields. Others, inexplicably, slipped through. Direct hits, Collins shouted, his voice rising in disbelief. Multiple impacts on their hull. On the tactical display, Elena watched as the Kravax cruiser's perfect symmetry was marred by a series of small explosions. The alien vessel listed slightly, its movements suddenly less precise. How? Admiral Thornton's voice crackled over the comm. Our conventional weapons couldn't penetrate their shields for months. Aisha was already analyzing the sensor data. It's the randomness, she explained, her fingers dancing across her console. Their shield harmonics are designed to counter predictable energy signatures. Our improvised weapons produce erratic energy fluctuations they can't anticipate. Elena didn't waste time celebrating. Chimera. Patchwork. Targeting data is being transmitted. Focus on the damaged sections. All ships, continue evasive maneuvers. The three scrap ships darted around the wounded Kravax cruiser in unpredictable patterns. Their movements were jerky and inefficient by conventional standards, but this very unpredictability confused the alien targeting systems. The Kravax responded with increasing desperation. Their weapon systems, so precise against conventional targets, struggling to lock onto the erratic movements of the human vessels. When they did score hits, the scrap ship's design philosophy proved its worth. Damaged sections detached cleanly, allowing the core vessels to maintain functionality. Phoenix taking heavy fire. Lieutenant Santos called from the helm. Losing starboard stabilizers. Jettison the compromised sections, Elena ordered calmly. Reroute power through the secondary systems. As designed, the damaged portions of the Phoenix broke away, trailing sparks and debris, but leaving the core ship intact. The Kravax, programmed to target ships as unified structures, continued firing at the detached pieces while the Phoenix regrouped. Patchwork reporting multiple breakthroughs in the enemy's defensive grid, Collins announced. Their shields are failing on the ventral quadrant. Elena leaned forward. All ships, concentrate fire on that section. Maximum output. The next volley tore through the Kravax cruiser's weakened defenses. Massive explosions bloomed across its once pristine surface. The alien ship tried to retreat, but its propulsion systems were compromised. With a final series of detonations, the Kravax vessel broke apart, the first major alien casualty in Earth's desperate defense. "We did it," Aisha whispered, her voice barely audible over the cheers erupting throughout the Phoenix's bridge. "One down," Elena replied, her eyes already on the tactical display where more Kravax ships were turning their attention to this unexpected threat. Many more to go. Word of the unexpected victory spread quickly. Admiral Thornton, his previous skepticism forgotten, immediately redirected all available resources to Operation Scrappy. The scrapyard became a hive of activity as more ships were hastily constructed following the successful prototype designs. Every junkyard, every scrap heap, every decommissioned vessel is now a resource. Elena addressed the growing workforce. We need more ships, more variations, more unpredictability. The Kravax will adapt. We need to stay ahead of them. Within weeks, a fleet of 30 scrap vessels had been assembled, each one unique, each incorporating different combinations of salvage technology. They ranged from small fighter-sized craft to massive impromptu carriers cobbled together from cargo ships and industrial platforms. Most importantly, teams now scoured the debris fields of fallen Kravax ships, salvaging alien technology to incorporate into the new designs. Each piece of recovered tech provided new insights into Kravax systems and new ways to exploit their weaknesses. In orbit, the alien command structure was thrown into disarray. Intercepted communications revealed growing frustration among the Kravax leadership. Their supreme commander, Vorax, demanded explanations for how primitive scrap could defeat their advanced technology. They don't understand innovation born of desperation, Elena explained during a strategy session. Their technological development has been linear and methodical. They've never had to improvise. The Kravax attempted to adapt, modifying their shield frequencies and attack patterns, but humanity's scrap fleet kept changing too. No two engagements were the same. Ships that suffered damage were rebuilt with different configurations. Weapons were constantly recalibrated and repositioned. 3 months after the first engagement, humanity had reclaimed Earth's orbital space. The Kravax maintained a defensive perimeter around their 5 remaining capital ships, seemingly at a loss for how to counter the human strategy. They're regrouping. Admiral Thornton noted during a war council. Intelligence suggests they're waiting for reinforcements. Elena studied the tactical projections. Then we need to strike now, before they can adapt further or receive support. The plan they developed was audacious. Rather than a conventional assault on the Kravax formation, the scrap fleet would execute what they called the junkyard gambit, deliberately sacrificing damaged and expendable components to create a debris field that would confuse Kravax sensors and provide cover for the main attack force. On the day of the assault, Elena addressed the crews of all 37 scrap vessels. What we lack in technological advancement, we make up for in creativity. What we lack in numbers, we make up for in courage. Today we show the Kravax and the galaxy that humanity will not be conquered. The battle began with a seemingly chaotic advance. Scrap ships approached the Kravax formation from multiple vectors, their movements erratic and unpredictable. The aliens responded with disciplined volleys of fire, destroying several human vessels in the initial exchange. But this was anticipated. The destroyed ships and jettisoned components created an expanding cloud of debris, a manufactured asteroid field that played havoc with Kravax targeting systems. Secondary phase commencing, Elena announced as the Phoenix dove through the debris field, followed by 15 other vessels. All ships execute jump maneuvers on my mark. The scrap fleet had incorporated salvaged Kravax jump drives, short-range teleportation technology that the aliens used for tactical repositioning. But unlike the Kravax, who used these jumps in predictable patterns, the human vessels had programmed random coordinates within attack range of the alien capital ships. Jump. In an instant, 16 scrap vessels disappeared from their positions in the debris field and reappeared practically on top of the Kravax formation. Before the aliens could reorient their defenses, the human ships opened fire from point-blank range. Direct hits across all targets. Collins reported as the Phoenix's weapons tore into the flagship of the Kravax fleet. Their shields are collapsing. The Kravax attempted to execute their own jump maneuvers to escape, but the debris field interfered with their navigational systems. Several alien vessels collided with floating wreckage, sustaining critical damage. Supreme Commander Vorax is hailing us, Aisha reported, surprise evident in her voice. Elena nodded. On screen, the alien commander appeared on the main display, a crystalline being with faceted features that seemed to shimmer with internal light. Its translated voice carried tones of both anger and disbelief. "This is impossible," Vorax stated. "Your technological level is insufficient for victory. Your tactics violate all strategic models." Elena met the alien's gaze steadily. "That's your mistake, Commander. You judged our technology, but failed to account for our resourcefulness. You cataloged our weapons but missed our greatest asset, our unpredictability." "The Kravax Dominion has conquered 17 star systems," Vorax responded. "No species has ever repelled our forces." "Then consider this a first," Elena replied. "Withdraw your remaining ships from Earth space immediately, or we'll demonstrate more of our impossible tactics." After a long moment, the alien commander gave what might have been the Kravax equivalent of a nod. "We will withdraw. But know this, human. The Dominion will analyze this encounter. We will adapt." "So will we," Elena promised. "That's what humans do best." The remaining Kravax vessels retreated, their once perfect formation now ragged and disorganized. As they disappeared into deep space, cheers erupted throughout the scrap fleet and in command centers across Earth. In the months that followed, humanity rebuilt. The technology salvaged from Kravax wreckage accelerated Earth's development by decades. More importantly, word of the victory spread through interstellar communications channels, reaching other species that had submitted to Kravax dominance. 1 year after the battle, Elena stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station Phoenix, watching as delegates from 3 previously conquered worlds arrived to form an alliance with Earth. "They're calling us the Scrapyard Saviors," Admiral Thornton said, joining her at the viewport. "Your junk fleet has become the symbol of resistance across the sector." Elena smiled, watching as new ships, hybrids of human ingenuity and salvaged alien tech, patrolled Earth's orbit. "The perfect weapon isn't the most advanced one," she said. "It's the one your enemy doesn't expect." In the darkness of space beyond, stars glittered like possibilities. Humanity had earned its place among them, not through technological superiority, but through the one resource no alien conquest could ever suppress: the stubborn refusal to surrender and the creativity born from desperation. The Kravax had laughed at human engineering, until our scrap warships crushed their fleet. Now the galaxy was learning what it meant when humans decided to fight back.